Hello lovely people, I'm back with another long form video, and yeah, I changed the background again. For some reason I'm having a hard time landing on a background to use. I really don't know why. This one's my current favorite because I've got the flag in the background and it's very professionally lit. I feel like it looks more like a professional set than anything I've done before. Let me know what you think. For right now at least, I'll be using this for long form videos, but I'm considering using it for shorts. I may change and I may go back to normal, like I've done many times, but I'm just going to be testing some things out. Do note, it is going to take a few days for all the shorts I have planned to come through the pipeline, so you won't actually see this background for a few shorts, but once it starts popping up, yeah, it should be cool. Without further ado though, because you didn't click on this video to learn about my new background, you clicked on this video to learn about Christopher Columbus, so let's get into it. Alright, for today's America 250 long form video, I'm talking about Christopher Columbus. Why him? Well, it's because, even though he's Italian, he's just as much a part of this country's history as anybody else who is American. Now in this video, I'm going to do a better job of trying not just rant and have sections where I address specific points. And the points I want to address are the Exploration Revolution, what caused it, and the beginning of exploring the world Europeans knew nothing about. Next, I want to touch on the journey Columbus actually made and how difficult it was, demonstrating how he was really a pioneer of his time, and I don't feel like he gets enough credit for what he did, discovering the Americas. And also, I want to talk about maybe what the future would have looked like if Columbus hadn't discovered the Americas, and how really he's a part of US history. So yeah, it should be a fun time. Let's go directly into point one. Alright, so the Exploration Revolution began long before Columbus. It actually began during the Crusades. So in the Crusades, basically, there were Christians and Muslims fighting mostly over Jerusalem, but over a few other things. And so, Muslims were going into Europe, and Christians were going into the Middle East. Now the Muslims, they were like, oh, there's not very much here. It's just kind of like old and wet and boring. The Christians, they went in there, and they were like,
it is Wednesday, my dudes.
Basically, they were really happy that they could eat seasoned food. Because compared to the Middle East, I can say Europe has a lot of awesome seasonings that I dream about putting in my food every day. Except for, of course, like basil. That's about it. And to be honest, I'm not even sure if that's native to Europe. You gotta let me know on that. So yeah, the Crusades basically made people realize that, yeah, food can taste good. Oh, also, silk exists. And so yeah, that's how the Silk Roads got started. And then Islam took over Constantinople, basically making it impossible to get into the East, except for, of course, by sea. Now, the only sea route into Asia was around the Horn of Africa, which can take a very long time, especially given the naval technology at the time. Now, that was that. If you wanted special stuff, you had to go around the Horn of Africa, so too bad for you, I guess. And that's how it stayed, until Renaissance scientists went, hey, science says that the Earth is round, so why don't we try going around the world? But no one wanted to try it until Christopher Columbus, who got the funding of King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella of Spain, which are the single most Spanish names you could possibly have. It's like you and your wife walk up to the Spanish-only place, and they ask for your name to confirm whether you're Spanish or not, and you just go like, Ferdinand and Isabella? And obviously, no crazy English people or French people or German people are named Ferdinand and Isabella. Obviously, you're Spanish, so they just let you in. So anybody who isn't Spanish and is named Ferdinand or Isabella, I'm sorry, I don't mean anything personally against you anyway. So he begins his journey to go around the world and sail so far west that he ends up east into India. Now, his calculations were technically correct. If he had gone west far enough, he would have ended up in Asia, but he didn't go far enough west and landed in the Americas. He didn't think it was America because, I mean, why would he? Why would there be another continent? In a European's mind, there wouldn't be. There was Europe and Asia and Africa. He just thought, oh, I've never seen people who look like this, or plants that look like this, or an environment that looks like this. This must be Asia. Specifically, India, which is why we often refer to Native Americans, even today, as Indians. And so that's how that happened. Now let's go on to point number two. His voyage was insane. So the Earth is round, you think. You see, that theory's never been tested yet. There's some people who say, oh yeah, it's round, look, see, look at this evidence right here. There's other people who say if you sail west, you're going to fall off the world. So while Columbus was pretty sure he wouldn't fall off the world, imagine being in that position.
Hello, welcome to Flight 3302, from Spain to India. We may or may not fall off the edge of the world, we actually have no idea.
I don't want to be here anymore. So yeah, the sheer bravery to just go ahead and do it, knowing that you very well might just fall off of existence, is quite the bravery, I guess. But it didn't require just courage, it required a lot of technical know-how and a long time navigating an uncharted ocean. And the reason it had remained uncharted was because the naval technology to actually navigate the open ocean only just started to pop up as Columbus made his journey. In medieval times, sailors hugged the coast. They did not leave. If they couldn't see land, well, they were screwed. Out in the open ocean, there is very little, if anything, to gauge the direction you're going. There's technically celestial signs like the sun, but that really doesn't gauge where you are. But Renaissance technology gave us stuff like the compass, and contact with the east gave us the astrolabe, both of which were vital tools to navigate the ocean that were just starting to be used. But even then, it's even worse than that. He figured the world was a lot smaller than it actually was, meaning that if the Americas wasn't there to catch him, he would have likely died in the ocean with all his crew. He was extremely lucky that the Americas were there, and I think we're all just as lucky, because the Americas have changed world history. His situation until he reached land looked basically hopeless though. There's multiple accounts of his crew waiting to commit a mutiny because they basically figured they were sailing to their own deaths, and their morale was collapsing. And even though the compass and the astrolabe helped him navigate a little bit, those weren't extremely precise all the time. He had to use a method called dead reckoning, guessing his latitude and longitude based on factors, and it ended up putting him hundreds of miles off course. He was an intelligent sailor though. He knew how to use wind systems to push himself across the Atlantic to get where he wanted to go. He was able to read ocean currents for the same reason, getting on the trade winds that led him into the Americas. And best of all, he committed to it. Because if he turned back, it would have meant the Americas probably would have never been found. At least not by him. And if he never turned back, they would have all probably died in the Pacific. Assuming the Americas weren't there, but that was a very real possibility for him. So the pressure was on. One interesting thing about him is that he kept two different sets of distance logs. One that showed the actual distance he went, and one that showed an extremely short distance so the crew wouldn't freak out. But really the thing you need to know from this is his math was wrong, and if the Americas weren't there, he should have died with everyone on the ships. It was a lot of luck, but also skill to keep calm under pressure and to read the signs that he had, as little as there were. And yeah, that's point two. That's his journey across the Atlantic that no one else was capable of. No culture had ever thought about traveling the ocean like that before. Christopher Columbus was one of the first, really only preceded by Leif Erikson the Viking. Also, if he didn't make it, it could have showed Europeans that, hey, he didn't return. There must be nothing over there. And we may have never known. Leading right into point three, what would happen if Columbus didn't discover the Americas? So I'm not really a historian. I can't say I can give a definite analysis. Meaning this last bit is more speculation and kind of a little fantasy for media experience. Main things we need to know. The conditions wouldn't have been there for the United States or any other American countries to exist the way they do today. Europe would not be as rich or powerful as it was 1492 onwards, because a lot of gold and silver and other precious metals came in from the Americas to places like Spain. In this eventuality, we're going to assume that the Americas were just a little bit too far and Columbus died in the ocean, meaning that Europeans would not go back over there, at least for a reasonable amount of time. What I do not see happening is the Native Americans getting powerful enough that they sail over the ocean. It could have happened, but here's why I don't think that's the case. You see, recently we just found tribes in the Amazon that are basically living at the Stone Age, in the year of our Lord 2026. If you want to check out more in-depth videos about why the Americas are actually a very difficult place to build a civilization and why it makes sense that the natives were not extremely advanced, at least by European standards, you should probably go do so. But the crux of it is, the Americas run north-south, Europe and Asia run east-west. It's not quite as easy to travel across climates like you do north-south, east-west. The climates are the same when you go east-west, meaning that crops can't be shared as easily and civilizations don't exist in the similar way that they do in Europe and Asia. It's a similar story for Africa, although that has to do more with the fact that the climate that where they live is so harsh, and also the culture that they've raised, which generally keeps them less technologically advanced when compared to Eurasia. I don't know why I didn't use Eurasia earlier. I don't know why I just thought about to use that, but I'm not going to change any of the other clips, so let's just go with it. which generally keeps them less technologically advanced when compared to Eurasia. What I'm not saying is that there's something wrong with Africa or the Americans or whatever, but just like geographically, technology doesn't flow quite as easily. Meaning, and this is very interesting, that China would be the most likely candidate to find the Americas. Specifically Ming China under Zheng He. So historically, China kind of stopped their voyages, but they had massive ships. And what we have to assume is that economic pressure would have eventually pushed either Europe or China to send out somebody. And in this, we're going with China, because I want to see what would happen if China found the Americas. So, a different emperor favors overseas expansion, and, well, Chinese ships sail through the Pacific to find the Americas. The Pacific is a much larger ocean than the Atlantic, but it is not empty. The Atlantic is basically an empty stretch of water, but the Pacific, if you've learned anything from anything I've ever talked about World War II, has a lot of little islands in it, meaning they have a lot of little places to stop that Columbus didn't have the leisure to do. And they have the Polynesians to help them with navigation, because the Polynesians, they know the Pacific pretty well. So we can assume that the Chinese then arrive on the west coast. Now this is where things get really interesting, because I'm not sure how the Chinese would have thought of the New World. Zheng He specifically wasn't extremely interested in expansion. At least not in the same sudden way the Europeans were, but it's really hard to say if you find an entire new continent what you'll do. If you want my opinion, the Asians would have done the exact same thing, I think. I think eventually Asians would have had problems with the Native Americans and done the exact same thing Europeans did. Not under Zheng He, but I think it's just implied. You can expect Asian diseases especially to maybe even be more devastating than European ones. For instance, the Black Death actually is a Himalayan disease that spread to Europe in the Silk Road and killed a third of the population. I think the Americas would be colonized, probably. Only you would have the Asians going into the east, and Europeans, I think, would eventually find out how to get there, and they would be coming west. And you probably have a lot more conflict and a much more stable new world. The world's axis might shift to Asia, though, making Asia more the center of the world, making it very rich and powerful, which could brew problems for how Asia deals with the Middle East, but I don't know exactly what that would look like. The most consequential part of this all is that the United States would not exist. And the United States was responsible for a lot of the technical advancements that make up the modern world. They made a lot of industrial technology, they made the car, the airplane, electricity. The United States has always been about breaking the cultural norm. It's always done things out of style from the rest of the world. And hey, that's part of what makes us cool. Europe might remain a bit of a poor continent. Colonization into Africa would have probably stayed about the same, but colonization into the Americas would have halted and changed completely. The political fallout from that would be a Spain and a Portugal that would not be extremely rich. The sun would set on the British Empire, and Europe might not have gotten the same political change it did because of the emboldenment after the American Revolution. For instance, the French Revolution and the Napoleonic era came about because the Americans did it and they were successful. Not completely, but in part to that. And yeah, really, if Columbus hadn't found the Americas, or if the Europeans hadn't found Americas, then the world would be a very different place. This is all speculation. I'd like to hear what your speculation might be. If you made it this far into the video, you're one of the lovely people. Please like, subscribe, and share if you haven't already. If you watched this entire video, you're worthy of being my subscriber. And remember, another day, another story.